Hello and welcome back to Restore 2023 and our journey through the Psalms. Today we come to Psalms 136 and 137, the closing psalms of what Jewish tradition calls the Great Hallel, which is basically the Song of Ascents with a few extras attached to the end. Psalm 136 is totally unique in that it repeats the same refrain after each verse, a total of 26 times. This happens to be the numerical value of the divine name Yahweh, if the letters were instead exchanged for numbers. It likely would have been sung in the Temple of Solomon, with a Levitical choir master leading the recital, and the people responding with that amazing refrain, "His love endures forever." We also know that it was sung by the army of Jehoshaphat, when they were confronted by a combined force of Moabites and Ammonites, and because the Lord fought the battle for them, a great victory was won without the Israelites even needing to fight. And you can read more about that if you're interested in 2 Chronicles chapter 20. It's an amazing story. The refrain, "His love endures forever," is repeated so many times because everything returns to this central aspect of who God is: eternal, enduring, unquenchable love. All that he has done in creation and in history, all that he has done for his people, in bringing them out of slavery, in leading them through the wilderness, in bringing them into the promised land. From his love, all his works flow, and to that love we must respond. The psalm is, in effect, a concise summary of salvation history up to this point, with 6 verses devoted to his creative work, 6 devoted to the Exodus, 1 to the wilderness wanderings, and 6 more to the conquest. At every stage, the Lord's love is the one constant, the one unchanging factor. Everything else changes, but he doesn't. And this whistle-stop tour through the Old Testament history of Israel is bookended by a threefold exhortation to give thanks, verses 1 to 3, and a conclusion, verses 23 to 26, that reiterates the psalm's main themes in reverse order. So even if it wasn't inspired, this psalm would still be a poetical masterpiece. But its real value lies in the reminder for us as God's people today that we too are part of this salvation, and this history is our history. The God we worship is the same one who created the universe, who is supreme over all other powers and lords and gods, and who was faithful to Israel throughout her history. And his love endures forever, meaning we can rely on it too. Psalm 137 has quite a different feel, a plaintive, wistful, even bitter song of an exile who has recently returned home, but who remembers clearly the agony of being torn from their homeland. If you're like me, you might have immediately thought of the Boney M song when you read those opening lines. But the original is quite a lot less cheerful. The picture is of a captive overwhelmed with grief, literally collapsing with it, mocked by their captors and bullied into performing for their entertainment. And there's a terrible tension at the heart of the psalm, because presumably the exiles would have liked nothing better than to sing their old familiar songs and remember Jerusalem. But not here, not in Babylon. How can they so degrade their holy songs, written for the worship of the Lord, for the entertainment and mockery of cruel pagans? To do so would feel like a betrayal of all that the Lord has done for them, and would represent a decision to conform within Babylonian society, to settle down, to be absorbed, to forget their unique identity as God's chosen people. The psalmist exclaims that he would rather never play his instrument again, never sing again, than have had this happen. Babylon may have been his current address for a time, but Jerusalem never stopped being his home. And we too find ourselves with a similar choice, because we live as exiles in a world that we no longer belong to, and we need to decide where our true citizenship and highest loyalty lies. Are we happy to blend seamlessly into Babylon, or are we going to stand out, always orientated towards Jerusalem? The other major theme of this psalm is a cry for justice. The psalmist has returned from exile to a shattered Jerusalem, yet Babylon remains unscathed, and her terrible crimes apparently unpunished. Where is the God of justice in this? Yet he remains confident that God will remember those who have wronged his people, and that their brutality will be visited on their own heads. He remembers how the Edomites, who should have been brothers to Israel, instead took advantage of their distress, their misfortune, and apparently egged the Babylonians on to their greater than usual savagery. And he asks God to remember them too. He also expresses confidence that Babylon herself cannot long remain unpunished, and that when the day finally comes, it will be no more than she deserves.